Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Helen Seslowski. I'm the events director for Oblong Books. Before I welcome our guests this evening, I have a few instructions for those of you who haven't attended an event of ours before. If you have any questions for Ian during the event, just leave them in the chat, which is, you can find that on the right-hand side of your screen. Or there's a little ask a question module at the bottom of your screen, and you can put questions in there as well, and we'll address those at the end of the program. For those of you who'd like to purchase a signed copy of My Time Will Come, there's a green Buy the Book button at the bottom of your screen. For those of you who like audiobooks, there's also a link in the chat where you can purchase the audiobook, which is actually narrated also by Ian Manuel. So we are very pleased. Oh, one last thing. Remember that every book you purchase, a donation will be made to the Bard Prison Initiative. We're very pleased to be partnering with the Bard Prison Initiative to host Ian Manuel for his acclaimed memoir, a memoir that, in his own words, is about crime, punishment, hope, and redemption. At 14, Ian was sentenced to life in prison without parole, and where he subsequently spent 18 years in solitary confinement. I'd now like to invite Bard Prison Initiative Director of Development, Laura Liebman, to tell us a little bit about the work that they do and how, as a community, we can support the program. And then Laura will introduce an alumnus of the program, Joseph Williams, who will be conducting the conversation with Ian this evening. So I'm going to hand over to you, Laura.
Thank you so much, Helen. It's hard to follow your beautiful British accent. We are the Bard Prison Initiative, just so honored to be here this evening in conversation with Ian. And Ian, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing your powerful story with all of us. And, you know, a huge thank you to Oblong Books, which for those of you who are not in the Hudson Valley, it's a true treasure. And we're so fortunate to have this wonderful bookstore in our community and now being shared across the world. To briefly introduce the Bard Prison Initiative, the work started more than 20 years ago in response to two major crises in the United States, what we now refer to as mass incarceration and the crisis of lack of access to higher education. And the work is really pushing back and defying expectations of who college is for in this country and where it can lead. And so the program originally began within prisons across New York State, and we're still in 6 prisons with more than 300 students enrolled, and they're doing the full spectrum of the Bard Liberal Arts College education. And if you're interested in learning more, I would encourage you to watch the film College Behind Bars, a documentary made by Lynn Novick and produced by Ken Burns and Sarah Botstein that is now on Netflix, a little plug for that. And beyond the work in prison, we now bring micro colleges, which are community-based college in Brooklyn Public Library, at the New York Public Library, in Holyoke, Mass, and on the main Bard campus, opening access to college opportunity for people who have been shut out of it because of racism, because of economics, because of life circumstances. And we also have a really innovative reentry and alumni affairs program that works with more than 700 alums like Joe Williams who have returned home and are cultivating their leadership and their expertise. And as I introduce Joseph Williams, it's just a true privilege. He is a colleague and a friend. And hopefully you've had a chance to read his extraordinary bio. What I will say is that at a time when this country and this world is crying out for leadership and for voices of people who have been marginalized and people who have brilliance and talent and thinking and innovative ideas, Joe is embodying that leadership. And we are just so fortunate and blessed to have him in our community as a licensed social worker, working with vulnerable people at Mount Sinai Hospital, with high school youth through My Brother's Keeper, and at Bard Prison Initiative. He's joining our team to help us as we develop wellness and therapeutic and trauma-based support for our community as well. And I just have to give one huge congratulations publicly. Joe was just accepted to the doctorate program in social work at NYU. And I'm really just honored to be here with Joe and with Ian. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Joe.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. But this is not about me. I definitely appreciate it. This here is about the man of the hour, Ian Manuel. My time will come. Brother King, this book is amazing. It was a dope read. I enjoyed it. Thank you for writing it.
You're welcome.
I want this time to be spent focusing on you, your experiences, and what it took to write and to publish My Time Will Come. It is a book of a memoir of crime, punishment, hope, and redemption, and in it is interlaced with poetry that speaks to different things that you've experienced throughout your time while incarcerated. So with that being said, what is the one poem that is the summation of who you are, Ian Manuel, and all that you've been through, and that one poem that speaks volume about who you are?
That's a tough question because all of my poems are like my little babies, right? It's difficult to pick one that is my favorite. But if I was to have to, speak of one that resonated with me deeply, it would have to be the title of my book, My Time Will Come. That poem.
Will you recite it for us?
Sure. But I want to preface it by saying, before I recite the poem, that this poem was written when I was under duress, when something very bad had happened to me. I had people might have heard me say this poem on Trevor Noah, heard me say this poem in other events, but this poem is meaningful because I wrote it after I had went back to court to be resentenced, and they had taken my life sentence back, and in place of it gave me 65 years.
Right.
And so for me to write this poem under those circumstances, after my hopes and dreams had just been crushed, it shows the type of mentality I had, because it speaks it's almost prophetic. And it says, I promise you, the brunt of my oppression has a purpose. And this same person that you persecute will one day be worshiped. Though I stand before you bare-chested and shirtless, with my soul and emotions naked, just wanting to be nurtured. Yeah, despite the desperation, desertion, and hurting, my time gonna come. Though I composed this poem, not knowing if I'll ever be able to perform it in an auditorium. I do it with the faith of a poet that believes he was born to do it. Like an acorn caught up in a storm, flung from the branch where it was born. You can only hold me back for so long. My time gonna come. Despite the difficulties and disappointments, my determination remains undaunted. Though the waters of my tomorrows are deep and uncharted, the buoyance of my character will float unwavering towards them. Like a song written, yet unrecorded, my time gonna come. Though you wrapped me in chains and sprayed me with chemical flames and did all of the things you did that add to my pain, my circumstances will change. I believe this with the depths of my being, that as long as this world continues to spin, it cannot end until it's been enjoyed by Ian. Mm-hmm. Remember this day, because things won't always be this way. My time gonna come. My time gonna come. Against all conceivable odds, my time gonna come.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Stylistically, as an author, who would you say has influenced you or who has inspired you the most, and in what way?
I could just speak on the books that I read in solitary confinement that impressed me. I started out reading Donald Goins and Iceberg Slams in my younger years. Then I gravitated to more spiritual books like Gary Zukav's The Seat of the Soul, or Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, Robert Greene, The 48 Laws of Power. I sought to learn things that developed me spiritually as well as intellectually.
Got it. I like it. So like you just came home in 2016, so you've been home. You're relatively fresh. And throughout the book, it speaks about so much time spent in solitary confinement. So since being released, in what ways have the years of imprisonment and solitary confinement affected you as you transition here on the outside?
Definitely, two things come to mind. Being able to hold my attention working a regular 9-to-5 job. I had so many dreams and aspirations of myself, and they were never working a 9-to-5. So it's hard to maintain my focus, and just the effects of solitary confinement, the monotony of the day. You have a lot of free times on your hand to just think, right? And not have to have a structure to your day. A 9-to-5 is more structured and boring, to be honest with you. So adjusting that to a 9-to-5 has been a hell of a job in and of itself. Also, I'm used to being by myself, right? Crowds don't bother me. Don't get that twisted. But I like to spend a lot of alone time. And out here in society, people like to mingle. Like, people were going crazy during the pandemic when it first hit because they had to stay home by themselves. But I'm like, all these privileges y'all got out here, y'all freaking out. Like, you can literally order your food. You can turn on the TV. You don't have to get permission to use the telephone. You can actually, if you wanted to, go outside and go to the grocery store. Those, man, that was a luxury.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely right. Yes, absolutely. Just to be able to take a shower. I remember one of my students, when the pandemic at the high school, when it took off, by week 3, we were doing My Brothers Keeper Zoom call, and he was like, "Joe, I don't know how you did all that time, man. This is killing me." And I just cracked up because, time becomes a luxury, and what is a coping skill for us, for others, I have a question as it pertains to your youth and what you experienced as a boy. After going through, and I want to call it the degradation of the Black body as a child, through the cruel and unusual punishment that you face, through your numerous stints with solitary confinement, abuse, and so on and so forth, would you now consider yourself a prison reformist, a prison abolitionist, or you're neutral on the topic?
I definitely would. That's a great question, and thank you for asking it. I would definitely consider myself a prison reformist because I think outside the box. The way I handle problems it's always been different than the way normal people attack problems. Like, for instance, when I got tired of trying to get out of solitary on my own for so many years and was headed against a brick wall, I wrote a Democratic senator who I remember, Bill Nelson. It's in the book. Who I remembered who I had written to before about my prison sentence. And he told me that he couldn't help me with my prison sentence, but that if I ever needed anything else that he could help me with, to reach out to him. And so when they just kept letting me stay in solitary at that time for 17 and a half years, and I was hurting myself and nothing was being done but putting me back into a bloody cell, I said, man, let me write Senator Nelson. And I've always felt like the way I communicate, if a person just reads what I write, that I'm injecting so much truth and authenticity into it that they won't have no choice but to respond to it. And that's what he did. And it was because of Senator Nelson setting the wheels in motion that I got out of solitary. And so to answer your question, I definitely consider myself a prison reformist.
I appreciate that one. As you speak, brother, right? And I'm thinking of a 13-year-old committing the crime that was committed at the age of 13, and then at the age of 14 being sentenced and being so powerless in that. And yet here you are so many years later on go time, right? With go time.
Yeah.
Who, if you had to give credit to 3 to 5, I would say your champions, who would those 3 to 5 individuals be throughout your life that gave you your fighting spirit?
My grandmother, Linda Johnson.
Okay.
My social worker, Mariah Morrison.
Okay.
She was hired by my lawyer, Brian Stevenson. Brian Stevenson would be the third one. My mom, Peggy. My mom, Peggy, would be the fourth one. Despite our tumultuous relationship, she said one thing to me that stuck with me throughout my time in solitary confinement. She said it when I was a child. She said, baby, no matter what, don't never let them take your mind.
There you go. I remember that line.
Yeah. So I'll give you 4. Those 4 come to mind.
I tip my hat to that.
Did I say Debbie?
Nah.
Debbie definitely, I would have to say Debbie as well. That would be the 5th person because she is a fighter. She survived something that could have very well taken her life, and then she began to fight for me. So definitely Debbie Bagley.
I appreciate that. All right. Let me see. What is your current say? And as a social worker, as a therapist, understanding I call it the trauma of crime and punishment. That paradigm in and of itself creates trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. And then there's this expectation, if while you're in prison, in solitary confinement, or in general population, you are not being prepared to be integrated back into society. And yet you are experiencing traumas, compounding traumas. Right. You lose a loved one. You've lost your entire immediate family. I remember in 1 year in 2010, I lost 3 loved ones back to back to back. And it was nothing that can be done. It's to the point seeing or hearing the chaplain, you get that feeling like, who's next?
Who's next?
Yeah. So
Wi-Fi connections. He'll be back in a second, ladies and gentlemen. He's having some Wi-Fi issues.
I'll come up. Well, Joseph sorts his Wi-Fi out, and I think I don't want to continue his question for him, but I imagine it's how did you deal with that loss? And Joseph's back. Okay, I'm out.
Sorry about that. I'm having so many glitches here, but
no problem. I'm here if you need us.
Thank you. I want to know, what is your relationship with mental health services now? And if you could affect any change on mental health services as it pertains for our brothers and sisters still incarcerated, how would you change the scope of services today?
So my answer to that question is that my view on mental health is something that's needed, especially for people that are re-entering into society from long-term incarceration. The current mental health system in prison, the current mental health system in prison is very punitive, right? It's not therapy. They're simply dotting their I's and crossing their T's. And what people might say, what do you mean by that, Ian? Well, for example, there was a lawsuit in the Florida prison system about the cruel and unusual punishment of the inmates in solitary confinement. Mm-hmm. And so based on this lawsuit, the Department of Corrections in Florida agreed to do certain things, to implement certain procedures. And so to dot their I's and cross their T's, they have group therapy now. But the group therapy, the individual therapy is more so them just trying to show that they're complying with the lawsuits or the parameters of the lawsuit, but they're not actually effectively administering mental health. The one thing that I said, I just did an interview recently where the guy asked me, how does mental health or medical play a role into what I do daily? I say, I put the care into it. Care has been removed for the people in the Department of Corrections, for the medical staff. They forgot the medical care part or the mental health care part. They don't care. They're just there to dot the I's and cross the T's. Got
it. Again, man, sorry for my technical glitches, man. I don't want to take away from your moment, you know?
No problem.
So my time will come. One of my poems, I ain't gonna hold you, Stretch My Imagination. I was a single child for like the first 9 years of my life before my little sister came along. Right. And brother, to have that imagination and then like to spend, 15 of my years in prison in total, the imagination is ill. So stretch my imagination. Can you share that with me?
Yeah, as soon as I found it in this book.
Okay.
That's not
page 21.
I know off the top of my head.
Page 21.
Page 21, okay. If I could stretch my imagination and split my thoughts apart, I reach past our separation and pull you closer to my heart. If I could stretch my imagination, I disintegrate these bars, reach upwards with my arms until my fingers touch the stars. If I could stretch my imagination like the muscles in my legs, I'd be the chest where you rest every time you're scared. If I could stretch my imagination like 1,000 rubber bands, I pull the strings of your heart until they pop me on my hands. If I could stretch my imagination like a rainbow in the clouds, I navigate icebergs and glaciers for the radiance of your smile. If I could stretch my imagination and bend the stiffness of my mind, I'd see past my limitations until I could stare into your eyes. If I could stretch my imagination.
Who is this poem written for, bro? What was going on for right here, bro? And I hope I ain't getting you in trouble.
Oh, man. Now, no one usually asks me who my poems are written for, but that poem was for someone that was very close to me, who was working on getting me out of my shell because I had built a barrier around myself, and they was working so hard to get into my heart and let them in. I can't reveal who they are.
No, it's cool.
But that poem's for a very special person in my life.
That's dope. I really, like I said, that's one of them. I'm gonna put you on the spot. Go to page 27. Ingredients. I like how you flip the ingredients with your name, the ingredients. So tell me, read this, share this one with us. Ingredients.
Thank you for doing this, man. That's a good question. Sprinkle seasons of solitude in a crock pot of confinement. Chop the hottest jalapenos and rub them in the wounds of your body. Burn family members like tinder that died in the 2000s and the 90s. Choke down hard times past your larynx like a toddler swallowing solids. Open bottles of ketchup from the tomatoes beneath your pigments. Turn up the gas behind the glass and let them bake you like a biscuit. Asleep inside a freezer with nothing but your skin. Then fidget inside a mixer as they beat you like an egg. Then you'll begin to understand how difficult my life has really been and the ingredients that it took. to make me everything I am.
Ingredients, my brother, ingredients.
You feeling that one?
I'm feeling that one, homie. You see, I had that one marked because our experiences, you know, there's a scripture that says, you know, every weapon formed against you shall not prosper. It's not that the weapon ain't gonna form. It's just that what the intended results of that weapon is, they not gonna prosper. Yet we go through it. Go ahead, bro.
That's facts. Now let me. I think I should break down the metaphors in this poem.
Please do.
You know, when I'm talking about the seasons of solitude, those the years in confinement. You know, the hottest jalapenos. You know, that's them chemical agents they used to spray on us to make your body get real hot, like it was like you were roasting it in an oven. You know, the family members that died, that's obvious. You know how difficult it is for a child to swallow anything that's solid. They need baby food. But that's how hard it was for me to swallow the hard times that I was experiencing in solitary. You know, open the bottles of ketchup from the tomatoes beneath my pigments. That's when I was cutting on myself to get out of solitary confinement, just to see some human touch, human contact, you know, or sleep inside a freezer. You know, that's when they used to strip me, take all my clothes, my mattress, my blanket.
Yeah,
you know?
The observation slab, yeah.
Or yeah, and then the fidget inside a mixer as they beat you like an egg. That's the multiple times that I've been physically assaulted by 300-pound correctional officers. And I can't scream or cry because guess what? That make them, if they see any sign of weakness, that make them go harder. You know, like I say all the time, if what they did to George Floyd in broad daylight happened and occurred in the United States of America in the streets of society, imagine what they doing to us behind closed doors with no one's taping.
That is a fact. That is a fact. And tell me, what is your goal for My Time Will Come, or rather, what are the most important takeaways that you want your readers to leave with after reading My Time Will Come?
Well, first of all, I wanted people to see that the human spirit is inconquerable, right? Like if you don't give up on yourself, that you can literally will things into existence. I don't know how I did it. Like I've had inmates and prisoners tell me, man, or even sergeants say, man, I don't know what God you've been praying to, right? But man, I ain't never seen nothing like this happen before, right? Man, you must be got people talk to me like I got a direct call, God on call or something, right? But I don't know how I do it. I just believe in something so much, and it's like I just will things into existence. I wish I knew the secret of how I did it. I do it a lot more often, but I don't even know the secret to it. But I want people to take away from the book the human will is inconquerable, that the impossible is obtainable, and that what goes on, that the system got it wrong. First of all, the system got it wrong. They tried to eradicate, obliterate me from society, saying that I was valueless, that I had nothing to offer society, and that I was incorrigible. But they don't understand that the human brain isn't fully developed as a 13-year-old child. Like I learned more, and I learned that what I was doing, hurting other people and growing up in my environment, it was more to life than that, and that was wrong, you know? And then I turned from my criminal way. I rehabilitated myself. The system didn't rehabilitate me. I rehabilitated myself, man. So I just wanted people to take away that the system got it wrong, and the human will, the human spirit, man, is inconquerable.
Brother, it's something that you just said, man, that is key, and it's something in the book. I forgot. I believe it was when one of the justices was reading or making a comment, and he said something to the effects was, they were in prison to be punished, not to be rehabilitated. And what we do with our time, the chess players, those of us who play life chess, we took that time and we said, I'm gonna map this thing out. That was the worst thing you could have done, you know? So I definitely appreciate you sharing your experiences with us through My Time Will Come. If you don't have the book, definitely reach out, purchase the book. The book is a great read. He bears his experiences, he bears his soul, he bears his past, he bears himself, and I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you.
I think if there's any questions, we could turn it over now. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Joseph. That was, you asked some wonderful questions. He did, especially who did you write that poem to? Took you for one.
My bad.
So, well, Laura says, Ian, your human spirit is incomparable. Your book should be required reading in every school in the country. And I have a tendency to agree with her. I have a question for you, Ian. How were you able to survive mentally and emerge with your sanity intact after 18 years of isolation, particularly, starting at such a young age? How did you do it?
Well, first of all, you have to believe in that this isn't the end. You have to believe that what man said, life in prison, is just him speaking, that he is not the end all be all, right? And so once I seen that, once I believed that I would see society again, I had to preserve my one defense, which was my mind, against going crazy. You know what I'm saying? Because I felt like if I lost this, then I would be lost too. And I've seen so many of my brothers and sisters lose it. So I tapped into my poetry. That was my therapy. It was a lot of pain, ma'am. It was a lot of pain, but I released it. I released a lot of my pain through my writing. And to answer your question that you asked earlier, Joe, once I got out, I went through an extensive therapy program in Arizona. PCS. It's for trauma. It's for people who have suffered. And it was 3 weeks, 12 hours of therapy, 7 days a week, equine therapy with horses, group therapy, psychodrama therapy. And those therapy sessions broke me down to face what I was running from, because I was running from the pain. Because as I talk about in my poem, Unquiet Tears, I just push it down. The therapy program allowed me to no longer run from it, but to push it up. And there was a lot of pain that came out.
Thank you for answering that. Debashis asks, I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. Thanks, Ian and Joseph. Ian, I watched you on The Daily Show and just had to watch this interview. I ordered your signed book from Oblong earlier today, which is very nice. Susanna says, you're an exceptional writer, assuming you were mostly self-taught. Could you talk about the development of your writing skills?
Oh, that's a great question, man. To be honest with you, God gives each and every one of us a gift. My gift just happens to be the ability to compose words in ways that move people. I just naturally have been, and you're right, I'm self-taught. I grew up in a cell. You either got it or you don't. But I will say this, I would write things and I would test them out on the ears of prisoners. And prisoners are like Simon Cowell. If you are garbage, they're going to let you know it. They're going to let you know it. So you don't want to expose yourself, but by me exposing myself to them and getting the feedback, I got better and better at my craft. Yeah, so that's the answer to the question.
That's a great question. Somebody else asked the question, can you describe what one of your cells looked like?
Yeah, sure. I was in several cells over the years. I'll give you a demonstration. Literally, one with a size 9.5 shoe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes up to 9 steps. From the front of the cell to the back of the cell, there's a steel bunk. There was a steel bunk, a thin urine stained mattress, a ventilation system, a steel toilet, and a steel sink. Man, with a 6x9 doesn't describe it, but it's like walking into an elevator. Just imagine spending 18 years in an elevator.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's an amazing metaphor. Somebody's said here, you said you were a prison reformist. Do you have specific ideas about how prison reform should happen?
Yeah, one thing we should do is we should end solitary confinement for juveniles. Like, no child should be kept in confinement. And then there should be a cap placed on the amount of time adults stay in solitary confinement. Those are two main steps that if we could just do that, it would improve the prison system in and of itself. But there's much more work that needs to be done. But those are two needed steps.
Helen, if I could interject to that as well, because I would also consider myself a prison reformist. And one of the things I think would be very instrumental in prison reform is that correction officers begin being taught how to do their job in a more rehabilitative manner, because at the end of the day, the majority of these individuals will return to society. Mm-hmm. And so if the job is treated with that in mind, these individuals are not animals who will remain in a cage. They will be returning to society. So that's a major prison reform I would just suggest.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that, Joseph. Amy Smith has asked, what books would you want to put in a library in a juvenile detention center? What are important books for young people to read?
I would definitely start with Just Mercy. Just Mercy. Yeah. My Time Will Come. And Gary Sukhav's, which has became my Bible, The Seat of the Soul. The Seat of the Soul.
That's a great list. We have time for a few more questions. There's another one here that if you could tell your 13-year-old self something or give him some sort of advice, what would it be?
I got a poem for that.
Ah.
It's called Take It Back, and it's in the book, My Time Will Come. Her mouth opens as she inhales her scream. The bullets are reloaded because the trigger was never squeezed. We're back at the start when we first asked for change, and her face is still the same because she never felt that pain. He isn't on his knees looking me in my eyes like I'm the last thing he'll see for the first and final time. The song Self-Destruction isn't resounding in my mind. We're just standing at the scene before it became a crime. I'm back in Central Park at that 2-story apartment building, never knowing that where I'm going would make this true story unforgettable. If I could see into the future, sitting on that porch on India, when my co-defendant came to visit, I'd have chose to stay with Lydia. July 27th, an unpleasant day in history. If I could ever take it back, it would be a total different memory. So I would have never committed that crime. It's what I would have taught my 13-year-old self in to stand on that porch and never going downtown.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Well, if we don't have any more questions, everyone? Last call. I think that's it. I would like to thank you both. Ian, very moving. Recommend this book for everyone to read, really, truly. Really. And Joseph, for a wonderful interview. Thank you. You asked some great questions, and congratulations on your acceptance into Silver School. It's a great school. You'll do really well there and have a good time. Congratulations. Thank you, Laura, for partnering with us to host this event at the Bard Prison Initiative. Signed copies of My Time Will Come are available at oblongbooks.com. I'd also like to express our thanks to Michiko Clark of Pantheon and Penguin Random House, who helped make this event possible. And thanks to all of you who joined us on Crowdcast tonight. Ian, Joseph, good night. Everyone, good night. Thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
Peace, people. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night, everyone.